Good evening and welcome to the January 14th meeting of the Auburn Board of Selectmen. In accordance with open meeting law, I would like to announce that this meeting is being recorded and ask if there's anyone in the audience also recording. We have an audio recording being made by the Worcester Telegram and Gazette. Anyone else? Seeing none, could we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sharon, did we have public comment? I thought somebody signed up. Thank you. The first item we have on our agenda is public comment, and we have Wayne Page, who is going to comment on towing. Is that correct, Mr. Page?
Good evening, Wayne Page, 90 Old Common Road in Auburn. I've been hearing a lot of different stories about the contracts for towing in Auburn, and I heard that an outside contractor has the contract for approximately 6 years, and there was an inside contractor that lives in Auburn, and wait a minute, let me get back to the other one, that this company is not giving the town any money for having this position in the town, and they're not from the town. They have given one of our selectmen a donation for their campaign, and we have an in-house contractor that was going to give $75,000 per year of each year of the contract. Through the chair to Julie Jacobson, could you answer that, please? Or anybody? Through the chair.
First of all, let me make this clear. The Board of Selectmen is not the contracting authority in the town manager is. So this is not a Board of Selectmen issue.
That's why I asked you.
And that's my response.
And do you have an answer?
Mrs. Jacobson's door is open. The Board of Selectmen do not handle the contract. You can contact the town manager directly. This isn't a Board of Selectmen item.
Well, I am a town resident, and I believe under citizens' comment, I have the right to bring this up. And if you're just going to do what you usually do, is try to shut the citizens up again, Miss Goodrich. You're the one that got the donation for $500. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Page.
Through the chair, and I will make a comment on that because that's inappropriate and uncalled for. I award the contract to the vendor that I believe is the most qualified in the town. That's what I've done. That's what I will continue to do. And the Board of Selectmen has nothing to do with it. Thank you.
It's a fact, period.
I see campaign season has started early. On a more positive note here, I am very happy to have in attendance with us some of the recipients of the Best of Auburn Awards. As you know, the Auburn Chamber of Commerce holds annually the Best of Awards. And I just want to first say something about the Chamber and its members. Not only are the Chamber members supportive of each other, but they are so supportive of the town. We're so appreciative of all that they do. There are several categories of the Best of, and we have some in attendance tonight. Although the awards were given, I believe, back in October maybe, or December, we did want to invite you in. So we have some in attendance here. I'll ask you to come up and you can tell us a little bit about your business. We have Kathy Kirk from the Holiday Inn Suites and Express. If you want to come up. Congratulations, and you were named Best Motel Hotel, and I know you are a very active member of the Chamber.
Yes, thank you so much for making us the Best of Auburn. We are the Holiday Inn Express. We are the only hotel that's locally owned in Auburn. We have 113 rooms, and we've been in business for about 14 years now. I've been with the hotel for 13. We're really active in the community with Rotary Club and other activities, so we love the town of Auburn, and we're really involved with the Chamber and other activities. So thank you.
Thank you and congratulations, and thanks for coming in tonight.
Thanks.
Next, we have Jonathan Knight from Central One Federal Credit Union, who was named Best Credit Union. Come on up and say a little bit about your company, and congratulations on being named Best Credit Union.
Thank you very much. It's truly a pleasure for us to be here. We've enjoyed all of our time since we've become a business operating in Auburn since 2006. As you well know, we're deepening our commitment to the town by locating an operations center adjacent to our branch location, which should be functioning within the next 18 months, we estimate. It's been a great ride. We're looking forward to many, many years ahead, and thank you for the recognition.
Thank you. And thank you, on a side note, I watched you go through the entire process with the planning board, and just again shows that you're part of the community by having so much neighbor involvement and being respectful of their concerns. So thank you. Next we have, who have been in business, I may or may not get this right, 103 years in the town of Auburn? 104. I blew it. We have...
The correct math is 105.
Oh, the brother Zingsha. We have Chris and Josh Fuller here from Fuller Auto Body and Collision Center for the best automotive repair shop. If you guys could please come up, being, I believe, the oldest business in Auburn, and say a few words about your business, and congratulations on that recognition.
On behalf of all of us at Fuller's, we are fourth-generation owners, Fuller Auto Body and Collision Center, as well as Speedy Oil Change and Tune-Up and Mechanical Repair. We've certainly enjoyed our time in the community, and it's truly a blessing and a treasure for both my brother and I to represent our family in the community and everything that the community continues to do for us on a daily basis. So we thank you very much for the recognition. And I myself, I hope you don't have to come see me as I represent the collision side. Most people like to see my brother for your regular preventative maintenance and mechanical repairs, but on behalf of the auto body and repair and collision, we thank you for your continued support.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Josh, I know you just said that, thank you for what the community does for you. We thank you for what you do to the community. When there's a need in town, you guys are always there for us, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We look forward to another 105 years.
Which generation will that be? Sixth and seventh generation? Is there anyone from Webster 5 here? Oh, there you are. Come on up. Roger? Roger Robinson from Webster 5, and they were awarded Best Bank.
Yes, thank you very much, Doreen, and thank you to everybody here. Webster 5 was nominated and selected again as the best bank in Auburn. I hate to say, but this is our 7th time in a row receiving this award. So we want to thank everybody from the chamber to the residents and everybody involved. Webster 5, not to play one-upsmanship, but it's 150 years old this past year. And we've had an Auburn branch for, this will be our 25th year in Auburn. So we definitely appreciate all the support of the community and hope to keep the success going. So thank you to everybody. Appreciate it.
And thank you, another very active chamber member as well. So thank you for all you do and being part of our community. And in attendance, last but not least, Auburn Town Hall was awarded Best Dressed Municipal and Civic Organization. So congratulations, Mr. Coyle. And
thank you. On behalf of the town employees, I'd just like to thank the chamber. We appreciate all the hard work that they do in town and the cooperation that we have with them, and we'd like to thank them. And take care.
Thank you, Bill. Did you want to say anything? I know how proud you are of.
Yeah, and Bill won't say this, but I want to make sure I thank DPW and all of the hard work that they do to keep the town best dressed and looking great. I think everyone can say, if you look at our veterans parks, if you look at our playgrounds, our fields, they're maintained beautifully. DPW does a great job, and because of your work, I believe this is the 2nd time that we've received this. We're not up to 7 times, Roger. We're working on it, though. So I want to also thank the Chamber of Commerce for their acknowledgement of all of our efforts, so thank you.
And the other business owners and community members weren't able to be here, but I do want to read the list because they should be recognized. So, think she's with you, right? Okay. Best overall restaurant and best dinner went to Chuck's Steakhouse. Best breakfast went to Tiny Tim's. Best pizza went to Papagino's. Best lunch went to Major League Roast Beef. Best cup of coffee you can find at Starbucks. The best family destination, Crystal Caves. The best cultural organization, which is right over here on South Street, is the Auburn Historical Society. The best new and used car dealer is Herb Chamber Toyota. Fitness facility, Everybody's Fitness. Salon and day spa, Untamed Salon. Insurance agency, Marsh Kep Insurance. The best nursery, garden center and florist, Bell's Lawn and Garden. Retail location, TJ Maxx. Travel agency, AAA. Best estate agency and customer service, Erica Sullivan Realty Group. Best dressed retail, Staples. And best dressed manufacturing, Worcester Envelope Company. And we have one more on the bottom, best dressed service or professional office, and that is the United States Postal Service. So congratulations, everyone. Thank you for being part of the chamber and just making Auburn a great community. So we're going to move on with the rest of our meeting. You're all welcome to stay, but please don't feel you have to, because this is our packet for tonight. So the next item we have on the agenda is the BSC group for the presentation of the swimming pool feasibility study. Ms. Jacobson, I will ask you to, we also have, are we going to move up the town manager's report so we can take them together? Item 6C, I'll have a motion to move them up together.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. So if you want to introduce our guests and also introduce Mrs. Pappas, who has been
So through the chair, you have a memo in your packet explaining the history of the swimming pool feasibility study. So as you can see from the packet, I just want to acknowledge for the residents to understand also that tonight with us we have Dr. Martha Pappas, and she very generously through the Pappas Foundation has offered to donate $1 million to the town for the construction of a swimming pool. And as most of you know, and I know all the board knows, we, prior to the board being able to make such a decision, you needed more data. And you needed to understand what the cost of a pool would be, what the cost of the operation would be, the maintenance, the ongoing capital needs. So also through the generosity of the Pappas Foundation, we were able to apply for and receive a grant for $30,000. And that grant allowed us to move forward and hire a consultant. And BSC Group was the winner of the bid on the consultant. And tonight with us, we have Jeff Vassar, who is the principal as well as the vice president of BSC. And he's also been our project manager, along with a couple of other people who've been involved who he'll mention. So Jeff is going to take you through the report, which is a lengthy report. I believe it's over 100 pages, and we provided it to the board at the end of last week, maybe midweek, to give you a chance to look at it, but fully recognize it's going to take some time to get through that report, but we wanted you to have it in advance. Jeff is going to just run through a summary of that report, and then our recommendation would be that the board then digest it all, ask plenty of questions of Jeff this evening. If there are additional questions after that, we can always get back to him and get back to you with more information, and then probably put it on an agenda in the future. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Before we start, also I want to thank Julie and Rachel, who were very involved with the preparation of the report and providing information, great resources for us, because a lot of data went into this study. And also on our team was myself, Steve Camuso, who we're fortunate to have him on board. He actually is kind of a fitness background, so he understands some of the benefits that a recreation facility like this can bring to the community. And we also had a consulting firm, Heller & Heller, on our team. And Barbara Heller does feasibility studies like this all over the country for swimming pools, for recreation facilities, community centers, public facilities such as this. So she was able to help put this in perspective of what's happening throughout the country, but also she was able to come up with some numbers to really make this specific to Auburn regarding the demand and the cost ranges of certain services that could be provided. So what I want to do tonight, as Julie mentioned, is quickly go over the report, talk about its purpose. We did 2 public surveys to get community input on the report, go through those quickly, which then led to community preferences for what the community would like to see in a facility like this. Costs, which is obviously a major consideration. We also looked at potential locations in town, and then happy to answer any questions you may have. So first of all, as Julie mentioned, this study was done thanks to the donation from the Dr. Arthur and Dr. Martha Pappas Foundation. And as Julie mentioned, we really wanted to be able to provide you with more information so that you can make a decision on the next steps the town would want to take with some background information and some context, things such as the residential demand for such a facility as well as regional demand, which I'll get into in a minute, what type of facility the community would like, what type of features they would like within the facility. Then knowing that, what does it take to construct such a facility from a cost perspective? Also, what does it take from a cost perspective to operate and maintain a facility and offer programs there? Again, we did look at potential locations and really give you all this information so that you can decide the next step you'd like to take in response to the offer of the generous grant for construction. We were also fortunate that before we got on board, the town, I think it was primarily Julie and Rachel, did some initial research of communities in the region that have municipal facilities. Is it indoor? Is it outdoor? How do they operate? And it was great input for us to start with. And here are some of the findings from that study, and that is most municipal facilities charge a fee for their use. Not everybody, but most of them do. The fees from use as well as rentals help offset the maintenance and operation costs. Most facilities operate in an annual deficit. There are 1 or 2 that do either break even or run a slight profit. And deficits range from small numbers to large numbers. And we've got that, we have numbers specific to your facility in our report. And then the operating costs deal with not only materials, but the staff that go into running the facility. And again, in the report, it just really focuses in later on the specifics of your facility, knowing what types of programs people would like to see if such a facility was built in Auburn. What was really informative and interesting were the 2 surveys we did. The first was to get some initial feedback from the community on interest in us having a facility, and if they were interested in a facility, what they'd like to see in it. We also had a public meeting here in this room where the public came and gave some initial feedback. But the best feedback we got were these 914 responses to some survey questions. I'm not going to go through each one. They're in your packet, but I'll go through those quickly so people in the audience can see. But there are a couple things I did want to point out as we go through these. So again, most of the responses were positive in an interest in having a facility in town. So the majority said they would use it. Majority said 1 to 2 times a week. It's kind of 50-50 if they have access to a facility now, and this helped inform Barbara Heller's kind of projections of how much the facility would be used. Most people preferred an indoor versus an outdoor. We asked about different features within the facility that people would like to see, whether it be a pool, the swimming pool or lap pool, diving pool, splash pad, concession areas, etc. And people gave us their preferences on that, so we were able to set some priorities. And then for programs, same thing, what programs would like to see, swim lessons, just general recreation, swim teams, certain lifeguard training and other things such as that. They gave us our preferences, and you can see from this that the most popular were the lap pool, kind of a family recreation, swimming pool, and swimming lessons. Then we asked if they'd be willing to support town funding to cover all or part of the cost of building a pool. The majority, well, close to the majority, 48% said yes. Same question regarding would they be supportive of town funding to cover the operation and maintenance of the pool. About 50% said yes. And then would they be willing to pay either a daily pass, a seasonal pass, et cetera, to help cover that cost? Yes. So that really gave us, especially when it came to the type of facility and the different amenities people would want in the facility, it gave us the opportunity to take this survey to the next level and then say, okay, knowing what people would like to see, what would it cost to actually build and operate a facility like that? And we looked at both an outdoor facility to build it and operate it, and we looked at an indoor facility to build it and operate it. And we looked at what we call the base pool, in other words, the basics of what would go into a facility like this. Obviously, the swimming pool, you need bathrooms, you need changing rooms, you need mechanical equipment, safety spaces, things like that. And then we looked at the costs if you added in other amenities people would like, such as the dive pool, therapy pool, things like that. So we really got specific on the numbers so we could re-ask some of the same questions, but in the context of, now that you know what it would cost, are you still interested in having a pool with all these different things in it? So in this second survey, we just got some basic demographic information about who was answering the survey, with the majority of the people being between 30 and 44, next group 45 to 59. Most people live in town and own property in town. And then we had given them some statistics about the costs and asked them, understanding the construction costs, which I'll get into a little later, are you interested in an indoor pool, an outdoor pool, or no pool? And the response was about 40% said, understanding the cost to construct, we would be supportive of an indoor pool. About 40% said, knowing the cost to construct, we're not interested in a pool at all. And about 20% said, knowing the cost to construct, we're interested in an outdoor pool. If they said no pool, we asked them why. Some of them said because they have a pool or they belong somewhere else, so they really don't need a pool, a municipal facility. And then they were able to give some verbal, not verbal, written answers to this question too, which ranged from, you know, they really wouldn't use it, they go elsewhere for such services, they didn't want to pay for it, they didn't want the town to have to bring on additional staff, things such as that, a whole variety of answers. Then we asked about for the same pool, for the indoor pool, if the community was to build it, what facilities would you like to see? Again, this is similar to the first survey, but we actually assigned cost to all these things this time. So they knew that if they added on certain facilities, there'd be an additional cost to the taxpayer. Again, we'll get into that in a minute. And then would they be willing to pay some sort of fee to use the pool? And the majority said yes, they would be willing to pay on a daily pass, but preferably more of like an annual pass. Since it's indoor, it would be year-round. Then we asked about an outdoor pool. I'm sorry, was that? Yeah. Asked about an outdoor pool, what facilities, same questions. What facilities would you like to see? Would you be willing to pay a fee? Yes. So then we kind of boiled all this down between the first survey, the second survey, the meetings we had one here, we had one at the high school. There really was a preference for a year-round indoor pool. There was a preference for what's called a 25-meter lap pool, for a splash pad, either a shade area if you're outside, a sitting area inside, a concession stand, diving pool, therapy pool, and more on the outside, if it was outside, something to make it more family interesting, slides or things such as that people could use in addition to swimming. For programs, swimming lessons were very popular. Also used the facility for special events, exercise classes of all ages, swim teams, lifeguard training or other kind of training such as underwater diver training, etc. So there was a real interest in specific programs as well as specific amenities. We then got into some of the costs, which I'll get into in a little more detail, but you remember that earlier question? Would you be willing to pay for it if it was indoor, outdoor, or would you not be interested in paying at all? Just wanted to reiterate, 40% said yes for indoor, 40% said they didn't want to pay at all, and 20% said yes for an outdoor. And if people are willing to pay for a fee to help offset operation and maintenance costs, the majority said yes in all cases. So now we get into the costs. So we looked at costs for an indoor pool as well as an outdoor pool facility. And we looked at the base cost. Again, that's the cost of the pool and whatever supporting facilities you need, again, such as the bathrooms, mechanical equipment, et cetera. So for an indoor pool, and these are estimates. I want to make it very clear these are estimates because these facilities could vary quite a bit based on types of materials, where it's built, et cetera. But around $9 million. We had to have some relative numbers here so people could answer the survey. So around $9 million for an indoor pool, $4.5 million for an outdoor pool. Then we asked them if they'd be willing to support additional tax dollars to add additional facilities in. We then went to the high end and said if you built a facility with all these additional features, for an indoor you'd be in the 12 to 14 million range, and for an outdoor the $6 to $8 million range. And then the town was great in generating numbers. How would this impact the typical tax bill, property tax bill for residential, for commercial, and for industrial? And you can see those numbers up there for what those costs would range. And again, they're ranging from the base pool to a pool with all the facilities. And since you have different tax rates for residential, commercial, industrial, you can see how those change based on the different category. We then looked at the numbers for operation and maintenance. So I'm going to point you to the second line down, the expense here. For an indoor pool, $840,000, and for an outdoor pool, $284,000. So part of the difference there is an outdoor pool is seasonal, 3 to 4 months of the year. Indoor is year-round. So obviously there's a difference in cost there just because you're open a lot longer. But at the same time, there's a potential revenue coming in either through user fees or through rentals, offering programs, teaming with other organizations. So there's a higher potential of revenue with an indoor pool, $675,000, outdoor about $260,000. But what's most important is that delta, the net revenue, and you're still looking at a deficit for both facilities, but the deficit for an indoor is about $165,000. Deficit for an outdoor is about $24,000. And again, these are relative numbers, just to give you an idea. If you decide to move forward on this, these numbers could be fine-tuned a lot more knowing the exact size and programs you would be offering. And again, the bottom column talks about the potential impact to a typical property tax bill. And these numbers are based on the full expense number, because there's no guarantee on what the revenue could be. These are all estimates. So we want to give you what we consider the worst case scenario. If you opened a pool and in doing so, you knew you were going to be kind of inheriting a certain number of expenses and the costs associated with those, this is how much you should be prepared to cover a worst case scenario. Obviously, you'd get some revenue, but that number would come down. Revenue the first couple of years isn't going to be as much as it would be 2 or 3 or 4 years out once people get used to having the facility in town. So we wanted to give you the worst case, knowing that it's going to be much less than that, certainly over time. And I kind of went over some of these earlier as I was explaining the different costs here. Then we also looked at potential locations in town where a facility such as this could be built. Again, knowing the rough size of a full build facility. Again, we worked with the town to look at town-owned property. We decided that would be the best way to start because there's no expense involved with property acquisition. And the town did have a number of parcels that showed potential to support a pool facility such as this. And there was one parcel rated as very good. That's the Pappas Recreation Area, where there are a number of facilities now. There is part of that property that's undeveloped and other parts around the developed facilities where you might be able to tuck a pool facility in. We think it would be a great complement to that, especially when you talk about shared parking necessity. We estimated a facility like this at a minimum needs 40 parking spaces, but there are certainly times when you're going to need more. So if you're in an area that already has parking, you have that built-in flexibility for additional parking. We also looked at, again, a number of other locations here, but two more that were of fair potential were Central Street, which is the old swimming beach. I forget the name of it, but please, thank you. That would be a tight fit there, but there's a possibility that the facility could fit in there. And the other location was kind of the South Hold Road area. It looks like that was an old subdivision that didn't get built out. There's some roadways that were started there, a lot of land there. Both Packagug and South Hold have some topography challenges there, but we feel as though there's enough land that in relatively flat areas that earth could be moved around and create a flat pad for the construction of a facility like this. So I've gone on long enough. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Do board members have any questions at this point? Mr. Holstrom.
I guess through the chair, one of the questions I have going through some of these, I know there's a lot of information here to go through, but I'm seeing just on the indoor pool itself, the net revenue loss, you're talking an 80.3% recovery. So we're already in the hole like 20% for the first year, or what I'm reading, if
yes.
This is an estimated cost. If we had that kind of a facility built, what would be our turnaround time to recoup those costs and, put us in the black again?
Again, we looked at averages, both locally as well as across the country, and it's very challenging to recoup those costs on an indoor facility, quite honestly. I wouldn't want to mislead you and say, 10 years down the road, you're very successful and popular, you're going to break even. There's a chance of that, but our research, mainly through Barbara Heller, she was pretty direct about this. She said it's very hard to break even on an indoor facility.
Okay, thank you.
Outdoor, there is the potential to break even.
Mr. Holstrom.
Through the chair to our CFO, Eddie, if we were to go forward with this project, what kind of a time frame are we talking for? I'm sure it'd be a bond issue. We'd have to go out and we'd have to borrow some of that money. Do you have any idea of how long it would be and what kind of costs it would be to the town?
So I believe the costs were highlighted tonight based upon a review and a calculation that was made in conjunction with our chief assessor. This would qualify for a 10-year purpose, no more than 10 years. And we structured the debt payment, estimated debt payment, based upon current rates on what that cost would be over that period of time. There are many scenarios with some options in here. All that information is available, and it varies depending on the total cost of the project for indoor pool versus an outdoor pool. The taxpayer impacts are listed on page 32 of the report. So for outdoor pool at a cost of $4.5 million, over a 10-year period, that would result in a residential tax increase of roughly 26 cents per thousand, commercial 32 cents per thousand, estimated cost over annual basis of $68.46 on the residential side, and $366 and change on the commercial property value. An indoor pool, which is twice the value, estimated at 9, and the estimates can run as high as 14. But at $9 million, it'd be 52 cents per $1,000 of value on the residential side, 65 on the commercial. resulting in an annual estimated tax increase on the single-family residential of $136, almost $137, and on the commercial property of $700 and roughly $45.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Berthium.
A couple of questions. One is liability. Insurance is obviously, have you put in insurance estimates into the costs here? Or is that something that gets added to town's insurance as an overall thing? We don't have numbers on it.
The costs for insurance were not put in here. The little bit I know about municipal insurance is it varies quite a bit community to community. I'm not quite sure what your current policy covers and what any additional costs would be. The other thing I should mention that's also not included in here there's labor costs in here associated with staff that would be hired for this facility, but there's also support services that the town would have to provide for human resources, for accounting purposes. Those costs are not reflected in here also. I don't know if any of that would require hiring an additional staff person in a particular department. This certainly means more hours need to be provided in various departments to support these operating needs, but those numbers were not calculated in here either.
Go ahead, Mr.
A second question through the chair, and I'm not sure if it would be directed toward finance manager, but so I just sat in a meeting where we're trying to lower as much as we can the burden on our seniors in town. We talk about the tax burden that I don't want to call it a burden, but the tax consequence that an indoor and outdoor pool would be. Is there any, does the town have any ability to have exclusions, based on, industrial companies may not be using the pool, or seniors, or, there's probably certain people that wouldn't be able to take advantage of the facility out there. Is there any way to exclude them from tax increase and push it on to a different demographic?
Other than the small business tax exemption that this board votes annually, that does provide some relief to businesses with a value of less than $1 million, would that calculation would apply to any level of taxation? Other than that, I'm not aware of any current exemptions that would apply, such as you have mentioned.
So something to consider, and hopefully something that I've been working toward is, eventually we want to bring the tax rate closer together. So the numbers that we're getting are today's numbers, and as we bring the commercial and the individual or residential taxes closer, the rates closer, there will be a impact on those numbers as well. I just want to bring some things to light that that need to be brought up that we will all take into consideration when deciding on something like this. And if I could, while I have the opportunity, I'd like to personally thank Dr. Pappas for allowing us just to get to this phase, and with the information that we have, to be able, most communities would, I'm sure, be struggling to make decisions like this, and just what you've done already has allowed us to really sit down and make educated decisions here, and thank you so much for that.
Does anyone have anything else? I just have a couple questions on the process and the data you collected. So, as a board, we try to reach out to the community and have as much community input on these larger issues, be it, a single-use plastic bag ban, a dog park, and of course, this is a significant cost to the taxpayers. Yet, when you had the first survey in May, 930 responded, which is a good number. I mean, that is approximately half of the number of voters we get in a local election in May. So 900 is an excellent number, yet when you went back in August with additional information, when it came down to the nuts and bolts of your tax dollars, we only had 400. Do you have a sense of what happened there?
I don't. I know we worked with the town to generate the survey questions and set it up. And I guess I'd ask Julie if anything was done differently to promote it first time versus second time.
Sure. The first time and the second time, they were promoted exactly the same. We wanted to be consistent. So they were promoted through our social media pages, our website, Auburn Cable Television, notification to the board on agendas. And we thought because of the time of year, being in August, people may be away also. So we extended, I don't remember exactly the date, but we extended the time period for response for that. And we continually posted things on Facebook and reminders on Auburn Cable Television and our website that the survey was out there. So nothing was done differently other than I would say we maybe pushed it even a little bit harder the second time when we saw the numbers weren't coming in. Same thing happened with the first meeting. The first community meeting was held. It was advertised, and I want to thank Rachel for all her work on this. It was advertised through Auburn Cable Television, the website, social media, information here, as well as our local media. I know it was written about, I believe, in Auburn Mass Daily as well as the Telegram, that this was taking place. And I think Auburn News also ran something on it. The first meeting we had, after all that advertising, we had about 20 people.
Yes.
And the second, with the same amount of advertising, actually more information, we only had 8 people. We tried to change locations. We tried to change nights, thinking that maybe we would get more. And instead, we actually got fewer. We thought we'd have it here on the second time because it might be easier to access in the high school. We were just trying to think of ways to engage people to come.
And I appreciate that information. I mean, as long as things were done in the same manner, the same process, because the last thing is, as members here on the board, we want to hear is we weren't even aware that this process was going on. So we have great information in this packet. I think people have given you information as to how they want to move forward. I mean, I attended that meeting, and, there were great display boards, and people had their little pegs they put, and and the whole conversation opened up about indoor versus outdoor, and it was great conversation. I just want to be sure that we're getting as much information out there, because this will ultimately go to the taxpayers and the voters.
If you don't mind, I'd like to add one thing to that.
Sure.
Obviously, we're presenting the facts here. I don't want to misconstrue that we're saying we got these survey results from these many people, and therefore this represents the opinion of the entire community. I think it's a very small sample.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it's just one piece
numbers
of what you need to take into consideration.
Yeah, and those numbers are in here, and that's why I wanted to point them out and acknowledge those numbers, but also, there's been the same opportunity for for people to participate.
Yes.
So, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. La Liberty.
So thank you for putting this all together.
Sure.
My question comes off of Mr. Berthium's in reference to liability, and I'm not sure if you might have an answer. I know it's not included in any of the costs, but I was just wondering through the chair if there was a difference in liability cost from an indoor versus an outdoor facility.
Unfortunately, I can't answer that either.
I think both of us can.
Town manager answer that.
There are no insurance costs definitively added to this, because without knowing what kind of facility it is, those costs will vary. So the town would, we reached out to our insurance agent, and he just said the cost would be very significant, but until there was something specific as far as location, size, access, parking, amenities, slide, no slide, all those things change the insurance. I will tell you, it is far more expensive on a building that's year-round than it would be on a seasonal. But the costs are significant. So rather than have our insurance agent try to work up a cost based on multiple scenarios, because there are too many here, we would just, he had said that it would be a significant cost.
Did you have anything else, Mr. Liberty? Okay. Mr. Holstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to echo Mr. Berthium's comments to Dr. Pappas. Thank you very much for allowing this to happen. I don't know if you've had a chance to see this packet, but it's very extensive. There's a lot of information to decipher here, but if you get a chance to look at it, it'd be very, very interesting to see exactly what has been proposed here. And I guess my question is, now that we have this information in front of us, and yes, we've had our presentation tonight, I guess through the chair to Julie, what is the time frame? Is there any schedule been set up for when we want to go forward with this or make a decision? If it comes to us and says we send it to the voters, what kind of time frame have we that we can set it in time to go to the voters?
So through the chair, in the cover memo that goes with this, I believe I had suggested that the board would want to take this up at their next meeting on January 28th or the following meeting on February, is it the 12th?
February 11th.
February 11th. As I believe the board should have a discussion and make a decision as to whether you're going to be putting this on as a ballot question in May. If you do want to put it on a ballot question in May, I believe you have 35 days prior to the election to get everything resolved. So you do have a little bit of time. We didn't want you to feel pressured, but our recommendation, and I believe it was in the next steps of the report as well, is to definitely bring this to the voters. The question is, what exactly do you want to bring to the voters? And that's something the board should discuss. You could bring to the voters a simple question: would you like to build, and it's a non-binding referendum, an indoor pool or an outdoor pool, yes or no? You could get more, you could, as the consultants had recommended, you could also go to the voters and say, would you be willing to spend X amount of dollars on a future comprehensive in-depth study which builds upon this? This is a feasibility study. Is it feasible? Is there demand? Is there a need for it? Would there be an ability to do it? Now you go to the next step, which is a comprehensive in-depth study, which would actually analyze these sites, look at the costs of those sites, and really get into the details of building such a facility. Those types of studies, if I would turn to you, would probably cost in the area of $150,000 to $250,000.
Probably a little on the high side, probably closer to 100 to 100. Well, it's always good to be conservative. 100 to 200,000. It depends on what you want the study to accomplish, but it's done with many school building projects or other processes like this that I'm familiar with, where before a community commits to a large expenditure for full design and construction, they do a preliminary conceptual plan so that the costs and the location and everything, permitting needs, all those things are very well defined so that the taxpayers know have much more definitive information about what a facility would look like, what would be contained within it, and what would be the actual cost to build something that looks like this, knowing the site and all the fit outs and materials and all those things.
And in conjunction with that, you'd need a town meeting vote to allocate the funding, similar to the $150,000 that we allocated for the public safety feasibility study. And moving forward, if the voters decided that they wanted to pursue the project, then the next phase after determining if they want to move forward on that would be to actually go to design build. And in general, the design costs of a project like this and any construction costs are about 10%. That's about the average. So if you're talking, a $4.5 million pool or a $9 million pool, figure 10% of that also goes toward design.
Mr. Berthium, and then Mr. Hollister.
Are we aware of any state or federal grants that might be out there for things like this?
Through the chair, I'm going to have Jeff answer. I know that was one of the questions that we were all looking at. The only one we could find had a maximum amount of $100,000.
Is that an annual or is that a bill?
No, it was a one-time.
Build grant?
But I'll let you, because you did some further research.
The state does have grant programs for park improvements. For physical improvements like this, it's done on a competitive basis. There is a cap. It changes year to year. The last one I'm aware of was maybe a $500,000 cap on a grant such as that. It's based on need in a community. It's based on the potential of a facility to serve a regional need, because then obviously it's open to more people. But it's also based on the financial strength or needs of a community. So it's, it's some of the communities that are struggling more financially rise to the top of getting grants like that. We know the city of Holyoke got a grant to replace their swimming pool. They had an existing one. They had to shut it down. They just got a grant through that program to replace that swimming facility. In that case, it was not for a new pool. It was just for a splash pad. So they do fund things like this. But again, it's based on the financial need of the community, the demographics of the community, and what the facility type is.
And also, have we talked to any other towns? I mean, I think that if we look at our local district, there's not many swimming pools in towns. I mean, is it something that we could maybe see if other towns might be interested in making it a regional facility where, Millbury High might share with us, Oxford High may share with us, and if have swim teams and things like that, where it would be a regional development instead of just a single town development.
Through the chair, and I will turn to Jeff for the details, but in general, it would have to be a regional facility anyway. It has to be open to the public. You can charge different rates for in-town residents versus out-of-town residents, but it has to be open to the public. BSC did look at the inventory of other pools in our region and determined that there may be a need for some regional programs here because there weren't that many that had a facility. And actually, I believe in your revenue section where you talked about programs, there's a section in there that talks about regional swim teams. The fact that there aren't that many public or private facilities that are out there. But we didn't look into whether the town would go in on with another community on a funding matter. That would be a different issue. This was just more on a program. Is there a need? Is there a demand?
You pretty well summarized it. No, we did not look into regional collaboration to construct it. And our numbers for operation and maintenance assume it's a town facility, but it would be open to others. And again, Barbara Heller, who really dove into the details, these types of details in the report, indicated that you really, you have to, but you really should open it up to regional use because that increases your revenue, which brings your cost down. For operation and maintenance, that wouldn't bring the cost down on construction. So I don't know, maybe it's worth looking at more of a collaborative for construction too. I can't point to an example of how that's been done in Massachusetts, but maybe it has, or no reason you can't be trailblazers.
Mr. Holstrom.
Okay. First off, thank you for coming in and making this presentation to us and providing this information for us. I guess we have that in front of us now. Is there any way that we can make this available to the residents to let them know what the feasibility study was, what kind of information, and how can they go about getting it?
Yep. Through the chair, please. Absolutely. We can post this tomorrow on our website. We have an entire webpage that we did set up that was related to this process where residents could check back for information. We had the links to the surveys there. We had public meeting notices there, so we would just add this there as well.
Okay, thank you, because there's a lot of information to go through, and I'm sure there'll be more questions, and I think that the questions we can collect from anybody from the outside that wasn't here tonight and has some more would just help us a little bit more decision-making information. So I just want to be sure that that was out there and that people could get a hold of this information. They could take a look at it. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holstrom. Mr. Carpenter?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions. How much of our current tax structure goes to debt? How much per thousand are we adding to the residents of Auburn to pay for the debts for existing borrowings?
I'm trying to remember on a percentage basis how much of the tax levy or total revenue is earmarked for debt. I don't want to misspeak. I do have that information. I don't have it available with me at the moment.
Okay. If I can, follow-up question. Do we have a good idea what other recreation needs? I know we just went through, or relatively recently went through, a plan for open space and recreation. If we borrow this money, whether in concert with other communities or not, I think the residents should know that this is going to prevent us from building other facilities that may have more need in the community. And if we use all of Pappas, which has probably one of the highest water tables in the town, which I'm sure, I don't know if you guys looked into that, but it certainly is more concerning to me that we're going to build something, a pool with one of the highest water tables in the town, in a fairly constricted, in a very well-utilized park. So, you know, I'd like some more information on scheduling at Pappas, how many activities are up there, if we're going to be using, you know, or thinking that we're going to be using this, you know, you can only use one space for one car. You can't use it, and if you have 5 other things going on up there, you're not going to have overflow at Pappas. There's already a, you know, parking shortage up there, as far as I can see. So my concern is, if we don't have a good handle on where we're going to be spending money, if we need to put money into fields that we existing have, and from what I hear, we don't have enough, and there's always constant demand, and the fields can't get rested, and people want more fields. So if we're going to spend $9 million or $14 million plus construction, which we don't know a lot of the fixed costs, which is, you know, if we're going to start adding staff, you know, I just don't buy that it's going to be that small of a figure per. And again, we're doing a static number, which I don't particularly care for. And if we're going to continue the march towards a single tax rate, those figures don't hold up to me. It's going to be a lot more on the residents. And I, for one, just feel that we need to really look at our debt, which is already identified in our own audit plan as being much higher than a town of our relative size. So I think we've put some money into some things, which we needed to do, but I also think that there are other needs in the community. It's always nice to have things, but there's a difference between wants and needs, and there's just so many questions that I have based on this that I couldn't support borrowing additional funds for something that's going to basically prevent the town from spending money on any number of other needs that exist in the town currently. But I do thank you for the information. It was very interesting reading. And with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Anyone else? Do you have anything you want to add?
No, through the chair, I just want to make sure I appreciate all of your insights too, just to make sure we did not, as an administration, look at this as any type of definitive where a pool would be located. The purpose of this study was to just look at the potential of all town-owned sites that were just over a certain amount of acreage. So absolutely agree with Mr. Carpenter. A more in-depth study would need to be done on a location, but that wasn't within the scope of this. That would come in with the next phase, if we did go forward with that, of that $200,000 study, where there's actual site analysis that has to be done. This was at a very basic level to just gauge interest. So I just want to be sure residents understand that we did not select a location. I know the Board of Selectmen wouldn't do that without resident input. We certainly wouldn't do that. This is just one option based on acreage that's available to the town. And that would absolutely have to be determined before anything proceeded. I also just want to make sure that we thank Dr. Martha Pappas and the Pappas Foundation, and I should have acknowledged that Sam Canary from the Pappas Foundation is here this evening as well, and they've been great following the process. They did provide the $30,000 for the feasibility study, so of course they have a keen interest in it, and I know Rachel had brought the report over to Mrs. Pappas last week, so she would have an opportunity to look at it. Again, it's a pretty large report, so we definitely want you to take the time. I want to thank BSC. You've done a great job. You gave us the product that we were looking for.
Thank you.
And your team. They were great, and I'm sure if we have a few follow-up questions, we know where to find you, so we'll reach out to you. And also want to thank our assessor. She did a lot of work on this. She had actually done an initial set of numbers based on the analysis back in July. Then when even more detailed analysis and more numbers came in, she went back within the last couple of weeks and redid all the numbers again based on the new tax rate and based on the information that was in here. And again, we're not capturing everything because until something is more defined, you can't capture all of that in a study of this magnitude, but I think we got a good idea of what the cost would be, what the impacts would be, what the demand is, what potential revenue sources we can have, and I think just to keep in mind, and it's clear in the report, it's very uncommon for a facility like this to break even.
Correct.
So no one's saying that the revenue sources would allow us to break even, so I think we need to recognize in addition to the cost, we also have the operation and maintenance costs on top of what would need to be put into the facility. But that is in the report. And lastly, I just let you know, we will put it online, and we'll make sure that we put it on a future agenda in the near future, because if you are going to the voters for some type of non-binding referendum question to get feedback from the voters, again, we have over 11,000 registered voters. We only had 900 at most take the survey, so you'd want to get some more input on it. But we do have a little time, but I don't want to wait too long because it does take time to develop what needs to be put on that ballot.
Okay. And we'll certainly look at the January 28th meeting and get information out there if we're looking for resident input. We just have to see what's, how large the agenda looks at that point. So, but it'll either be the 28th or the 11th. Does anyone have anything else? Thank you both for being here. Thank you for the report.
You're welcome.
This person in front of Darlene. I do know that
We're going to move it up.
Bill is here for the...
Yeah, well, I think we're going to move up the, could I have a motion to move up agenda item 6A, the Auburn Public Donation Collection Bin Regulation approved by the Board of Health?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted.
Thank you. Through the chair, the next item on your agenda is the most recently approved public donation collection bin regulation by the Board of Health. And Darlene Coyle, the Director of Public Health, is here with her team. And just want to thank the board and the chair for bringing this issue up. For several years now, it's been a concern about the donation bins and some of the concerns that we've had. So this was developed in conjunction with town administration and the Board of Health to try to address some of those issues that all communities struggle with these donation bins that are just overflowing. So I'm going to turn it over to Darlene, and Eileen is here as well.
Thank you, Julie. Good evening, Darlene Coyle, Director of Development and Inspectional Services, and Eileen Alexander, our Assistant Health Director. And I'd also like to recognize our newest member of the team, who's actually been here a year, Jordan Brusso, our Health Inspector. So we have, I'm happy to say this has been a long time in the making, and we're happy to be at this point to be able to let you know that we actually have a regulation in place for the public donation bins. As you all know from driving around town, there's quite a few donation bins in town. And over the years, there have been a lot of issues around certain ones, probably all of them at some point, but certain areas kind of attract more people to the areas. And so we tried to put together a regulation keeping in mind other towns have done regulations. We kind of looked at everything that was out there and tried to take what would work best here in Auburn. We feel like we've come up with a good regulation that fits our town. So we went through a process with the Board of Health and had a lot of discussions back and forth with certain pieces of it, how we were going to implement it, and so forth. So we have the regulation passed in October, and we wanted to give a transition period. So we had a 90-day period where the regulation is in effect, but essentially we would start the permitting process and so forth once the 90 days was up. So the purpose of the regulation is just nuts and bolts of it to keep the donation bins for the purpose that they serve. So recognizing that donation bins do have a purpose, we're always cognizant of ways that people can take and reuse, recycle. I think you hear me say that a lot in different realms of what we do at the Board of Health, but we really do want to give people an outlet to get rid of clothing, textiles, shoes, and the bins do serve that purpose. So if the bins are operated in a proper manner, we feel that that can happen and the town can stay so that they're not an eyesore, it's not a blighted area. So basically to keep them in a clean and safe condition is our ultimate goal. And we have had over the years collecting information, and at this point my team, I can say that they've spent a lot of time trying to get contact information for the bin owners. We are in a good spot where we recognize we have about 30 of them in town. Believe it or not, they're kind of in areas that some of them we didn't even realize, but they do pop up. So we have about 30 to date, and we have made contact with pretty much all of the owners. The permitting process will start in the coming weeks, and we will go through and make sure that each of the bins meet the requirements for the regulation. So each bin will require a permit. We'll have to have contact information for the bin owner and then also the property owner if those are different, recognizing that some people may rent out space on their property to have these bins. What we have found through some of the experience and reaching out to the owners, that these bins can be lucrative, for the materials that they do collect. There is a market for that. Not all of them are for charitable purposes. Some of them are for profit. So recognizing that as well, these bins become something that people want to keep in place. So a permit will be required. The bins have to be in good shape. They can't be. They have to be made of metal or some structural material. They can't be rusted. They can't have holes in them. They have to be locked so that people can't stop and go through, which sometimes we do see. I've actually even seen sometimes where people will try to go inside the bins. So we want to obviously not allow that as well. But sometimes people will send family members into the bins to pull out the stuff. So, that's kind of more on the extreme cases, but I personally have pulled up where somebody was dumping at a bin and, I had to call the police and have them respond. But we feel like if we can get the information out to the bin operators and the property owners, we'll be able to have 24-hour contacts for both the bin owner and then the property owner. So that will give us some sort of redundancy to be able to pick up the phone anytime we see them to be able to respond. As part of the regulation 2, we have a kind of a rapid response time. So we are hoping that if we do see a problem and we let the bin operator know, property owner know, they'll have 24 hours to respond. If they do not respond, then we can start with an enforcement action. But I do have to say, even though we've had problems with bin operators, both Eileen and Jordan have been been able to get people to respond very quickly. I think, you know, if you are in town, you do notice certain areas, and even yesterday when I was in town, I noticed there was dumping around one of the bins. I contacted my staff, and today we were able to make contact, and they were able to clean up that bin. Obviously, we don't want it to get to that point, which is what we're hoping this regulation will help with. But even so, my staff has been very resourceful to be able to get operators to pay attention. So wanted to just bring to your attention the fact that the Board of Health did put this regulation in place. We do have, as part of the regulation, there's only going to be 3 bins per parcel. There's no bins that are going to be grandfathered, so every bin in town will have to adhere to the requirements. There's certain size requirements. There's a schedule. So there has to be at least a weekly schedule for pickup. It can't go more than 7 days. However, with what we know for a lot of bins in town, there are several pickups usually for these bins, just because they do get full, and so we know at least for several of them, they're in town several times a week. And actually, Eileen has even increased pickups on some of them with working with the operators. They'll have to be on paved surfaces. They can't be on vacant properties, so there has to be another use at the property. It have to be a primary use. The bin would be in addition to that, so it can't be just a vacant piece of property with a bin on it. We do have enforcement measures that we felt were reasonable that we put in place, but again, I think just the fact that we are going to permit them will put us ahead to try to maintain these in a clean and safe manner.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Laludi, then Mr. Holstrom.
Thanks. So the first thing that I have is, and it's really just a comment, but you've already touched on it a little bit, is I was wondering if 24 hours would be enough time, but you said that there was really quick response time from the people that you've already worked with, so I don't see an issue there. My only question, and through the chair, that would be is there a way to appeal this if someone was away or for whatever reason couldn't respond in the 24 hours and was charged, and maybe there was some reason for that? Is there a way to appeal to the Board of Health, and what would that process look like?
That's a great question. So as far as the 24 hours, I can just give an example for Eileen did reach out several times to different bin owners, and we had to turn around. Believe it or not, same day. So that part I feel is reasonable. If we do have any issues with the process for somebody that does say they get some sort of penalty. There can always be an appeal to the Board of Health, and typically what that is it's going to be a letter, a request letter to the board. We schedule a hearing, and then the board would hear the appeal of the operator or property owner. So we have done appeals in other, not for this, obviously, but for other topics, if you will. We do go through appeals, and that is something that would be acceptable.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Hallstrom, was it you? Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Hallstrom.
Thank you. And thank you for coming in tonight. I know that Mrs. Goodrich has been mentioned to me several times about the illegal dumping, and I do see that along some of the roadways, and it's a tough thing to see, but I'm glad that this regulation has been put in place. My only question is, it seems like it's pretty well detailed, pretty well thought out. Should this be a bylaw? Would there be more teeth in this regulation if it became a bylaw for the town? I know that we have permitting and different licensing for, say, even for yard sales, that type of thing. Is that something that, we could make this a bylaw and, have a little bit more enforcement strength to it?
That's a great question. I think that certainly if the board would want to consider adopting this as a bylaw, certainly we can look into that. Part of the, I guess, the scope of the Board of Health, we have been over the several years that that I've been here, the Board of Health was the one that would directly take the calls, do the response to the concern, as with a lot of times if people aren't sure where to call, they're calling our office, Inspectional Services, anyways, but the Board of Health responds to trash complaints, dumping, anywhere there's areas of concern for health, safety, sanitary or unsanitary conditions, if you will. It's something that made sense to us to look at it as a Board of Health regulation, but certainly, if the board wanted to look at it as a bylaw, certainly I think that's probably under your purview. The thing that I would offer for you is we're just getting into the process of getting these permits going. So I could probably, give information back to the board once we have all of them permitted, once we have identified any issues, if we, hopefully, things are going to go smoothly, but you never know. I mean, whenever there's a new regulation and new permitting process, we expect some bumps in the road, so we'll work through those. We're certainly happy to report back to the board, in 4 to 6 months' time to let you know how it's going, and you can certainly, see if you wanted to look at a bylaw then. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Well, the only thing that brought it to my attention, Darlene, was that you said that you had found somebody that was basically illegally dumping, and you called the police department. Well, now the police department has, because it's a bylaw, it is something that they would recognize and they could enforce themselves or make a direct call to you somehow. I don't know. I guess it's just a second layer of enforcement, so that if the police go by, there is a bylaw in place, they can enforce bylaws in the town also. It's just a thinking out loud and thought, because I don't want to hold this progress, because I think this is an ideal thing, and then I won't have to listen to Mrs. Goodrich anymore. But I think it's a great thing, and I don't want to hold any progress, but I think just a little bit more teeth in it, I think if we can make it a bylaw, and I'm just going to leave that out for discussion.
Okay. And if I could just follow up, I'm sorry, I should have probably expanded. our police department, I would call them for any time where I'm going to confront somebody in an adversarial type manner. Somebody had pulled in, they were actively dumping, and I wouldn't approach anybody without having police there. So that's kind of the framework. I should have probably expanded. It was more for safety and...
Thank you.
So I just want to thank you for your work on this. I know that you've been listening to me about this since you've been here. I've been talking about it for 10 years, and I mean, but we hear about it, we see it on the roads we travel. Mr. Holstrom talked about making it a bylaw, and I certainly agree that that's something that we should look at in the future. What jumped out at me is that this is a regulation adopted by the Board of Health, and I think that's a good start because this is new and you want to see what works and what doesn't work. If you need to add more teeth to it, I'd rather see you, amend your regulation, because first, a bylaw would have to be adopted by town meeting, and if we were to make an amendment to a bylaw, it would then, it's a long process, and I think, being under the purview of the Board of Health and having them have the ability to tweak this over the next year, because it is all new, and we know that, many of the people who just cite these bins on the property aren't there, they're not monitoring it, it's just when they get a call from you, and they do take care of it in 24 hours. But the next challenge we have to address and deal with that's combined with this is, like Mr. Holstrom just said, it's not donation bins and what they're, what people are donating, and they think that, oh, if I, close my eyes and I pretend that somebody wants this broken doll carriage, I feel good about myself. It's illegal dumping. And that's what we have to look at next is the amount of illegal dumping, and give you and give the police department, better tools and more teeth to address that. But this certainly is a great start. I think if property owners get that call today and then again tomorrow because somebody, emptied out a truck and did all this illegal dumping, and they have the potential to have the fine if they don't address it, paying attention to these boxes would be to their benefit so that it's not a financial burden on them. Right now, there's no consequences. So the entire board and your department, thank you for the work on this. I hope it's a good start. I hope, again, all of these bins, like they should in big letters, talk about illegal dumping, because that's just what it is. So, Mr. Berthium.
Quick question. So there's approximately 30 bins in town. How many different companies are there? How many different organizations have bins?
Great question. So we have, Jordan has scoured the town and spent a good amount of time going around and has put together a spreadsheet. We have approximately 8 different companies, and under those 8, there's several that they have in different locations. So they're not all in just one area. They're going to be spread around town.
And to follow up on that, could we let it be known to them that if there ever is a case where they can't be contacted, that we have the right to have one of the other organizations, one of the other 8, go and pick up the overflow? I know they don't want to have people on a steady basis doing that, but if the town requests it, not necessarily what's in their bin, in a locked bin, but if there's overflow on the side and you can't get a hold of, say, Organization A, we should have the right as a town to call Organization B and say, hey, if you can get over there, go get the overflow.
So I think what I'm hearing from you is if a particular owner or operator is non-responsive, somebody else who's doing the right thing can take that spot. I mean, I per se, as the Board of Health, can't make that happen. However, I can tell you from the regulation, if somebody is not responsive, they're going to be before our board. Just for the 24-hour notice, and then additionally, we have language in the regulation that is, if somebody just completely doesn't do anything and it's a 30-day time limit, then we can actually, as the town, remove the box and then lien the owner. So we have that language in here that we added to the regulation, and knock on wood, hopefully we don't have to go down that route, but certainly we may look at, having a fund, like a revolving fund or something of that sort, where we would devote money just for cleanup cost, and that would get funded by the fines and so forth that get paid.
Just through the chair, point of clarification on what I was saying wasn't necessarily that somebody could go take that space from an organization, but just simply that, a resident calls in that there's overflow at a certain area. You call Organization A, whose bin is at that area. There's overflow at that bin. You can't get a hold of Organization A. You should have the right to call Organization B because you know they're in town on that day and say, hey, if you're willing to go clean that overflow for the day, go ahead and do that. And that's all I was saying, was not necessarily to kick Organization A out of that spot, because there may be, like Mr. Liberty said, there may be circumstances where Organization A would love to if they could, but they can't. By the same token, we're expecting a rainstorm or whatever, and we just want to get that overflow from being a complete mess in town, That's what,
okay. I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Oh, that's okay.
I misinterpreted it. A lot of the times of what we see, unfortunately, the stuff that's outside the bin is usually junk. So it's very
That's why they leave
infrequent,
it outside.
right?
Because it's stuff that doesn't belong in the bins, can't fit, or is actually illegal dumping.
So another organization wouldn't want it.
Right, so it's basically, sometimes like broken furniture, electronics, broken baby toys or high chairs or something like that, where somebody doesn't want to pay per se to get rid of it, but they're going to bring it to a donation bin because they are donating it. Well, it's really trash, and quite honestly, with these donation bins, they're that profitable that the operators are willing to take what they have to get rid of for trash, and what is in the bin is valuable. So it actually is worth their while to clean up the trash because they know what they have inside is profitable. Does that
Yes.
answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's usually not wanted items on the outside.
And I'll just comment that, because this is a new regulation, and, I see your videos on local cable access, I think, through the media as well, this is a great opportunity for education. I know people that are sincere that they have donations, a bag of clothes they want to leave, and don't realize that if that bin is full, you cannot put it on the ground. It may be something that's accepted, but you can't put it on the ground. Anything outside of the bin is illegal dumping. I don't think people realize that, and I think the more education we get out there, and we just, pound it home that this is all illegal dumping. Your high chair is not an acceptable item. It's illegal dumping, and I think we have to focus on the fear of a fine of illegal dumping. Mm-hmm. But it's a great opportunity to educate people who really want to do the right thing, who may reach out to you and say, you know what, I have 3 bags of clothes that I want to bring to the bin, but I also have some small household items. How can I dispose of them? And I know you guys are great. You have it on the website, whether it's Big Brothers, Big Sisters, places that take textiles, whatever. I think it's just again, it's an opportunity for continued education.
And I do want to point out, we did recognize that, and we actually added, this was one of the things that I wanted to put in this regulation is we actually are going to require a sign on the bin to say, warning, no donation, donations allowed to be left outside of the collection bin. And one other thing that, because I know Eileen and I feel very strongly about this, in Jordan was her first time, this past Household Hazardous Waste Day was the first time we were able to have textile donations. So we feel strongly about it. We think that if we can give people the tools to do the right thing, that it makes it easier for everybody. So we're very proud of that, and I appreciate your time so that we could update you on the reg.
Thank you so much. Anything else? Thank you. Thank you for all the work you did on this,
Thank you very much.
I know you did, all of you did a lot of behind-the-scenes work before you brought it to your board, so thank you.
Thank you.
So just because we have people here, I'll entertain a motion to move up agenda item 6D, which is the 5-year facility improvement plan that Mr. Coyle is here for.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Any discussion for moving it up?
Just, is there anybody here from the Dowling Corporation?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I've checked the audience.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we have moved up agenda item 6D. Is there, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. The 5-year facility improvement plan. Mrs. Jacobson.
Thank you very much. Thank you for moving this item up. Just wanted to remind the board that when you set my goals last April, one of the goals on top of the regular items to be done was to update this 5-year facility improvement plan. So this 5-year improvement plan was initially done in January of 2015. So I would say that Bill Coyle has done a yeoman's job working on this. There are multiple personnel who were involved in this throughout town administration. I would tell you every department head, every division head has met on several occasions with DPW, myself, Ed Casanova, to talk about what they need to do to keep their facilities in good repair, and B, what would that potential cost be, and how can we afford that cost. So what you see before you is a plan that then Bill and Joanna Paquin, who's our civil engineer, working with Jimmy Beauregard, who is the foreman in the facility maintenance unit, went through every single municipal facility to update the list that was initially done for you back in 2015. Included in that, so there were actually 3 different pieces of this in the plan, but you will see the FY19 to FY23 5-year facility improvement plan list, and it's all, it's by building, and it will show you the fiscal year that we're anticipating the work would be done. If the cost has been programmed, meaning if it was already in the CIP, it's in there. If it was not programmed, that means it's not in the CIP yet. It will have to get in the CIP for the year that we have identified that the cost is needed. And we're also projecting what will be done in-house and outsourced. And also want to show you, there is a list also of all items that were actually programmed in on the capital improvement list. And then finally, there is, they did a great job of updating the improvements and repairs that have been done since 2011. And that data is in there because that's when we started that was when we actually first created the DPW. And in 2012, we actually created the facility maintenance unit. But we started doing some work back in 2011. So as you can see, over $850,000 have been saved since 2011 on doing these projects in-house versus outsourcing them, and the total cost to the town has been $1.7 million over that period of time, again, to bring our facilities up to good repair. So with that being said, this is a 5-year plan, and each building has been identified for what the needs are of that building. And I'm going to turn to Bill and let him just go over some of them with you, but what I do want to point out is Camp Gleason is one of the buildings that was on it last year, 3 years ago in 2015 for the 5-year plan. It's not showing us specific items this year because we intend on coming in with a recommendation to the annual town meeting this May to utilize funding through local cable funds to renovate Camp Gleason so that we can utilize it for additional office and meeting and event space. And the cable funds will allow us to make the facility cable ready, and so that we can televise meetings. We all know we have 2 spaces here for meetings, and that's it. And even tonight was a perfect example. We actually had a group that was meeting in the lower level. We had a group that had to meet on the 3rd floor, which is not a public meeting because it's not handicapped accessible. We had a group going in there and a group coming in here. So we don't have enough space. So we are looking to renovate the Camp Gleason space to make it better usable for additional meetings and televised. And also, we've run out of space at the library and the senior center for programs that are up there. So it would be nice to be able to use our facilities. So you're not seeing a lot of specifics to Camp Gleason in this report because it would come under a broader plan to renovate the facility for additional event space. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Bill and see if there's anything you want to highlight or point out. Or
Sure. Thank you, and, Madam Chair. This process, as Julie mentioned, we've been working on this probably for a year on and off, and we've met with Julie and Ed in their office several times to review it, numerous times, because it's constantly changing. I'd say on a weekly basis, things change. Department heads have different needs that come up. I first want to thank Jimmy Beauregard. Without all his work and his team working on all these projects, we wouldn't have all the successful work that they've completed. And you go through every building, you can see signs of the work that they've completed over the many years now that we've been doing this. And I want to thank Joanna Paquin. Joanna and I spent a lot of time, and Jimmy, going through the list to the point where I think you just have to put it aside. There's just so many things. If you look through it closely, you can see where some of the figures, for example, on the non-CIP list, you'll see a double asterisk next to the fire station, most of the work for the fire station. And the reason for the double asterisk is that those projects are currently being put on hold and pending the result of the feasibility study for the police and fire station. So some of the major projects that we had programmed for police and fire are currently on hold. You'll also see we had programmed some fairly large numbers in here as well. At one time, looking at an addition for the police station, we had looked at $500,000, and new HVAC system, $350,000. So again, those projects are obviously on hold, not knowing the future of the buildings. So we also, if you look, there's notations of each project, whether or not they were in a town meeting article. So it's literally going through each project, meeting with every department head, what their projects are. So it's not just DPW's facility projects. We have to look at what are the library facilities projects, what are police, fire, and then going through all the town meeting votes and find what article it was presented at. And a lot of times those articles are then revised, especially the library funds are then reprogrammed for a different purpose. So trying to track all those funds and working with the accountant's office was quite a bit of work. So when you look at one item, you think, well, that's one item. Well, sometimes that one item might have taken us a half an hour to figure out where it came from, where was the fund, where did the funding come from? Is it programmed? Is it not programmed? Are the funds still available? Contacting Eddie's office, are those funds still available? Were they reprogrammed? So it's definitely a lot of work to keep track of this. And as the town manager mentioned, it's a fluid process. It's constantly changing. So we try to stay on top of it. We try to look at what we have scheduled for FY19. We try to be realistic on what we can accomplish, and then adjust it as time goes on. So it's been a lot of work. I think it's been a great effort by a lot of people, and we'll continue working on it. And be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
No,
any
I have one comment, yeah. Through the chair, your DPW in general has done an awesome job across the town, and it does not go unnoticed. I've been in many of the facilities around town off and on over the holidays and here and there, and there's been a lot of work done. I can see that there are improvements still in process, and some that are needed. but you've stayed way ahead of it. The goal of making this facilities program happen has worked out. It's been great, and it will continue because it's an ongoing project. Absolutely. I can see that. But thank you all and your department for all the work you've done.
Thank you. And just one other thing I'd like to point out is even during the winter months, right now, our 2 full-time golf course employees are working on paint. They were painting downstairs at the town hall. So we try to utilize everybody whenever they have any downtime to do additional work. And then as the golf season picks up, then the shared resources from using highway department, potentially to work on drainage improvements of the golf course, basically to take that time that they've put into the town hall and then compensating it where the golf course is an enterprise fund. We want to make sure those hours are accounted for and put back into the golf course as well. So we kind of work back and forth, same thing with the sewer department and other projects. So it's a team effort. I think a lot of it's not just the facilities, it's also other employees that also pitch in within DPW. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we do see that, but we see that, you've created a sense of team, and people, their work is appreciated, which, results in them producing more. So thank you. You've built quite the team there, and I know that they respect you as the team leader. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you guys here for anything else? Okay, because I'll move it up unless you have anything else. Okay. All right, so we'll go back to the agenda then. Back to Board of Selectmen general items. We have a drain layers license for Downing Corporation of Rentham, Mass. Inside your packet. This is a new application for somebody who has not done work in the town. Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the license provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. The next item we have under Board of Selectmen general items is gift acceptance in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A. And we have to the Department of Public Services, the Senior Center, from Webster First Federal Credit Union, the Auburn branch, and the amount of $100. And its designated use is for a program event at the Senior Center for St. Patrick's Day. Is there a motion?
Accept with gratitude.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Thank you. It's unanimous. Under proclamations and recognitions, we have none. So we have an update from the town manager on the potential for live streaming the Board of Selectmen's meetings through YouTube. Ms. Jacobson, I know this is an item that Selectman La Liberty and Mr. Berthium were working on, so.
Right, so the subcommittee, I know you were working on trying to find a way, and I think you had done a test through Facebook.
Facebook Live, yeah, right.
Facebook Live. And I want to ask Chris Hugo if he wants to jump in at any point, but Chris Hugo, who's our cable television manager, has been working with the school department to see if they could help the subcommittee by making any recommendations as to how we could potentially do this. I know the board hasn't voted to do this yet, and you want to still have conversations, but the last discussion we had about it through the subcommittee was that it wasn't working out quite so well on Facebook. So Mr. Hugo took the...
We've set all the machines up to stream on YouTube. All we have to do is push a button. We chose YouTube specifically because not everybody is a member, is on Facebook, and not everybody wants to be on Facebook. YouTube just lets us get a broader audience.
So it is possible to do the live streaming?
The equipment is all already set up. All we literally have to do is push a button.
Okay, so at the start of the meeting, if somebody was logged onto YouTube and they would need to know what to search for?
They go directly to our YouTube website, which is ACTV Auburn. And there'd be a live live button there, push live, and it'll receive the the signal. And anyone can take that URL and paste it into Facebook or any of the other social medias, and then the program will be live there as well. But our target would be YouTube.
And and forgive me if you've already said, I might have missed it at the beginning, have you done this with any of the other boards or committees?
No, we've tested it. We've done live testing from each location that we have one of the TriCaster switchers, and it does stream.
Okay.
It's about a 5 to 10 second delay. And we're still working on the resolutions. It's streaming in high definition, so it's...
I just thought of another question before I open it up. Would YouTube streaming be the same as this, where you switch cameras so you would get the same views as what you would see on cable, you would just get it live?
It's the same feed as what we're going out live with right now. It just streams to the internet instead of going through the cable.
So for anyone at home who wouldn't have Charter Internet, who we have our contract with, they would now be able to see these meetings. Okay.
Or if any of you are on vacation and you want to see a live meeting.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Mr. Berthiaume?
I would just say that Mr. Liberty and I were actually trying to set up another meeting, so we'll see if we can get a hold of Mr. Hugo to join us. And you said you were working on that through the school department?
Well, all of our equipment, all of our switchers, our TriCaster switchers, are capable of streaming. We've literally just programmed in the right sites now, to the point where if I push the stream button now, it will stream over YouTube.
So my question is besides yourself, who we obviously want to invite to our next meeting, is there anyone else that you feel should be there, information-wise?
Our newest member of the board of the local channel committee is Aaron Keys. He's my counterpart in Spencer. They use the same equipment that we do, and together we were able to figure out the settings in our equipment.
Well, that's great news. I appreciate that, and we'll definitely get you involved. Thank you.
And then we'll eventually bring it to the board for a vote on.
Yeah,
okay.
We'll have to.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Moving on, town manager items. We've taken up the first item. The next would be the town manager's goals and objectives. Ms. Jacobson, I'll turn it over to you.
Certainly. First of all, I want to thank the board for having this conversation today in January as opposed to in April, following the whole evaluation process. This would be helpful to me as well as to all of town administration and Ed Kazanovich, and just to have the full year. As you know, my contract year, so therefore my evaluation year runs the end of January to the end of January. So to be able to have 12 months to work on goals that the board set is very helpful. So thank you for having that conversation tonight. As in prior years, you've asked me, and according to my contract, it's a mutual discussion on what goals that we want to discuss. So I've come in with some thoughts on that and just wanted to share some things with you. So last year, you did give me 3 goals. And one was the 5-year facility improvement plan update that you heard tonight. The second was the swimming pool feasibility study that you heard this evening. And the third was to initiate the public safety facility feasibility study, which is underway. So those were the 3 goals. I will report on those fully in the report that I turn into, I think, the end of February. The report is due. This year, I wanted to share with the board, I thought this would be helpful because oftentimes the board has asked me what are the projects we have going on, what is the timeline for things that are going on, and I thought it would be helpful for you to see this. I just want to be clear, the projects that are on here, but for a couple of items at the end, these are all new projects that will be taking place this year. These are not projects that a part of the day-to-day operating or administration. Those I put at the bottom because there are actually 3. The FY20 budget, which we're in the process now. As a matter of fact, last week we started meeting with department heads. Every department head meeting is about 2 hours for initially starting the budget, and then we go into the full budget process with the finance committee. I'm putting that on here now for you to see it, just because usually the goals are set in April. So by April, we're pretty much through the budget process. But because we start in January, I wanted you to see that. Likewise, the annual report. So all of our annual reports, my own, including every single department and board and commission in town, is due January 31st. Then we have to go through and put that whole packet together, call with any questions, do any editing, and get that ready for annual town meeting. Again, that takes place over the next 2 to 3 months. And then, obviously, my annual evaluation report is due to you in about a month. So those are the things that are just coming up in the next month that usually we don't talk about because we're doing this in April. So I just wanted to go through a couple of thoughts that I have, but I wanted you to see the timeline. The swimming pool feasibility study and next steps, depending on how the board decides to proceed. If you decide to proceed with a ballot question or any other continued work, that's why there's 2 different colors on it, that could conceivably go through May, and depending on what the public does, that could go well beyond May and into the next several years, actually. The public safety feasibility study is underway. That is going to be, our target is to finish that by the end of October. So my suggestion would be to make that one of the goals. It will help all of us understand that it's a priority. The police department, fire department, and DPW are all involved in that, as are myself and Ed Kazanovich. And we do have a consultant, and again, this is a major, major undertaking that we have here. The next one is our bond rating and official statement. We don't do this every year, but this year we are doing it because we have to go out and do long-term borrowing and solidifying the bond for some of the middle school projects that were done on bands. So that is due. We actually should wrap that up in February, but between now and then, we have our 200-page official statement that we're working on that's got to get to the Unibank. We've got our bond rating call in a couple of weeks, I think in 4 weeks, and then we have to get ready to go out to bond. So that's a process that doesn't come up every year. It happens to be coming up right now. The next thing is the local comprehensive, sorry, repeat the word local, the comprehensive local emergency management plan that I just found out last week. We have to get that done in the next year. And that is a plan that takes all of the other plans that we've been working on, the hazmat plan, the shelter plan, the animal shelter plan, all of the plans that we've done over the last few years, puts it into one comprehensive document, and there is a boilerplate that we have to follow that the state has. And we had our first meeting on that last week. It's a major undertaking. Mark Moss, who's our emergency management director, is bringing everyone together for the first time, but that's going to fall on town administration. We all walked out with assignments. That's a massive document. It's really critical we get it done. It's our emergency management blueprint. So if there's an emergency, we know who's in charge, where do you go, where do you hold this, where are your shelters. It's all got to be brought together. We have someone from MEMA that's going to be working with us on it as well, and he would like to see it done within a year. I'm aggressively saying that, and I mistakenly put here up until May, but actually I thought we had to get it done by June, but he did say we could have the whole year to do that. So that line does extend out on that. Obviously, just a reminder, collective bargaining, we have 10 municipal contracts that come up that are all due June 30th. Ed Kazanovich and I, along with each department head for the respective collective bargaining units, start our collective bargaining. We spent the last 4 months analyzing and doing preparation work in advance of this, and our first meeting is tomorrow. And moving forward, I would anticipate that's probably going to be about 50% of our time during the days that are here, based on all the meetings that we have to have. The zoning bylaw revision and new bylaws, that process continues. That is an ongoing process. It involves every town department, especially when we're looking at new bylaws. And you just saw, just by example, this wasn't a bylaw, but the Board of Health regulation, that was something that town administration worked on for several years. The Drury Square project and bylaw, that's something that we're aiming to get on a town meeting at the end of May. We still have a whole process that we have to go through with the planning board and with additional input. Potentially, the ballot question, I know the board has already voted to put the plastic bag question, and potentially the swimming pool, and again, we have to see what the board wants us to do with that information. The farmers market restructure, we are looking to change the way we operate our farmers market this year, to move it to a Thursday evening on the night of our concerts in the summer, to try to encourage more people to come. And we've also expanded the committee that's putting together the farmers market, and we're doing more outreach, and we're modeling ourselves on successful farmers market all over the state that we've been researching. And then we are in the process of trying to meet with various farmers from over central Massachusetts and try to get them to come. And we would likely be doing this on a weekly basis, whereas right now we've done it 3 times in the summer. Right. The Citizens Leadership Academy, happy to say that that is an item in your packet tonight, and we're ready to move forward and start the 2nd annual Citizens Leadership Academy. And as you know, that involves every town department, including the school department, and we added a week to it this year because we found that we just had too much information crammed into 10 weeks, so it's now an 11-week, and we'll start March 28th, and it will go through June 6th. The MVP Planning for Climate Change grant. We did receive a grant to plan for climate change from the state, and that's another emergency management tool that involves every department on the town side as well as the both water districts. We're also, that grant, you will soon be getting some information on a public meeting if you didn't already get an email on Friday about that coming up in February. That's probably about an 8-month process. I believe that goes through the end of July. The LED lighting and pole purchase, that was the grant that we got for about $239,000, and we're going to be purchasing the lights. We've been in negotiations with National Grid, our our town council and our insurance agent and National Grid representatives and myself and Eddie for about 3 months now, trying to come to an agreement on the P&S and for the actual agreement to purchase these light poles, and it's taking an incredible amount of time on the language and the requirements that National Grid has been trying to ask the town for. Other towns are now involved on their own because they're also negotiating the same problems, and we've run into some barriers. So we're seeking an extension on that grant from the state so that we don't lose the grant, because we still need to get a contract, an agreement in place with National Grid. The dog park grant and project, we did put that grant in. If we get that, that project will take the next probably 1.5 to 2 years because we have to go through the design phase and then the bidding, construction, and probably one other season, so maybe 1.5 years on that. The municipal aggregation bid, so for our municipal aggregation contract, that date is up this coming June, so in April we have to start doing the research and working with our consultants. We actually go out to bid and get the best price and work with the vendor to get the best rates that we can get for our residents, and we have to lock that up by June. The school redevelopment projects, I'm happy to say they are continuing. Just by brief update, those are 2 projects that are major to us. We're involved very heavily. Just this last week, we've probably spent 15 hours or so working with all of our legislators and partners in Penrose, because Penrose Development was invited to go to the next round of funding for the Mary D. Stone School, which is a really good sign. The Julia Bancroft School will not be in the same round. The state will only do 1 per municipality, so that would be a future round. So we're still working on state tax credits with the developer for Julia Bancroft, but now Mary D. gets fast-tracked because of the invite from the state. We also have to take on the comprehensive review of all of our insurance policies. We have to fill out a number of forms that are due for all types of insurance across the board, liability, indemnification, things we were talking about with regard to a swimming pool. We have to look at all of that this year. And we also have to do a full analysis of our health insurance, where the rates are coming in, and whether we need to incorporate anything into our collective bargaining process. We did receive approval from town meeting to revamp our entire website, so that project just started 2 weeks ago, and our target is to finish that in June, get it online by the end of June, and July work out any of the tweaks that we might have to put to it once it goes live. But that is redoing the entire website, and that involves every town department. The Faith Ave land disposition swap, I did send the board in a note, but I want to make sure the public knows that we did get the legislation approved through the efforts of Senator Moore and Representative Frost to allow us to swap the town-owned land near the Faith Ave and Diamond project, and now that involves another entire process of getting appraisals and working with the developer, working with the 2 attorneys, and getting this into place in accordance with Mass General Law. We are also going to be looking at our trash collection system, restructuring how that works right now. Over the last couple of years, it's become its own entity. It's become a very large undertaking for town staff to do. So we are looking internally to restructure it, to place this in another department, to ramp up that department with some additional staffing to handle this situation. And the contract will be due in, is it a year, Eddie?
It'll be a year from this coming June, so June 30th of 20.
So starting this June, we will have to start, we have to actually start that before that, looking at what our options are for contracts, analyzing the contract, and getting ready to go out to bid for that project too, which would have to go out a year from now. I just mentioned the renovation plan and budget for Camp Gleason. We need to get all of this ready. We've been working with DPW, working on our own to try to put together some architect plans and put a number on it, working with local cable to see how we could fund this without the use of tax levy dollars, and then be prepared to come to town meeting in May with that, and then to go forward on that renovation project. And we also have to establish a stormwater committee to develop regulations per our new stormwater bylaw. That bylaw requires that you have a committee in place, and those regulations need to be developed. So the first meeting of that stormwater committee, I believe, will be in February. We just made the appointments to that. Per the bylaw, it has to be a representative of the water department, the civil engineer, the town engineer. It's all outlined in the bylaw who was actually a member of that committee. And we also have to start this month the ADA transition plan, which is looking at all of our ADA and accessibility issues on roads, sidewalks, and in buildings. And that's probably going to take, I would say, upwards of a year, but at least we'd like to get a draft plan in place. And we have an internal committee that's starting to work on that next month. And then the continuation of the master plan, you'll see in here, there is a grant from that we're putting into CMRPC for some DTLA assistance with the master plan outreach of it, but we're trying to rejuvenate the committee. We've got just a few more pieces to go that we're paying for consultants through CMRPC to do. They had some staff changes at CMRPC, so they were not able to address it last year, so they're working on it this year, and all of us are working on so-called Chapter 3, which is a chapter on all the municipal facilities. And that itself is maybe a 50 or 60-page document on every single building and facility needs in town, and we have to finish that this year as well. So my recommendation is we have to do all of this. As far as goals that make the most sense, I would say because last year's goal was to get the feasibility, public safety facility feasibility started, I would say that that should be a goal for us, so we know that we want to continue to do that and get that done. Also, the local comprehensive emergency management plan, that's something that we have to get done. It would be helpful if we had that as a priority goal, because I could then make that also a goal for all the departments that are involved in that, and some of the non-municipal departments that we really need their assistance on. It would be nice if they saw that it was a town priority as well. The Citizens Leadership Academy, that was a goal of mine last year. We're doing it again this year, so I would throw that out there. And the MVP Planning for Climate Change grant, that's another major undertaking that involves every municipal department, including the school department. I'm done.
Is that all you've been doing
That's
all day?
Yeah.
Mr. Holstrom.
Okay. As we can all see through this piece of paper, and I'll hold this up for anybody that's out there in the viewing audience, this is a pretty extensive program of, well, goals, no, initiatives, projects that the town manager is responsible for ultimately by the 2009 charter. I find it very, very difficult for us to put our finger on 1, 2, 3, or 4 individual goals that the town manager is responsible for. The town manager is ultimately responsible for all of what she has spelled out here for us. There are ongoing projects, and there will be more projects coming in as they go along. And as you can see, the time frame has been spelled out so that they know what the priorities are, what the schedules are, and when they should be done. And if things aren't done on time, especially things like the stormwater project, the town of Auburn could be held responsible for that. And as she had mentioned, the local comprehensive local emergency management plan, we could be in real serious trouble if that plan isn't put in place and accepted by the state. Then it comes back to, reimbursement funds for any damages or any situation that may come up with that. I guess, in summary, I'm having a very difficult time putting my finger on a goal that she has put goals on for herself. The evaluation form we have every year is something that she has in her contract and she's accepted. And we can still apply that evaluation form and that report to her work. It spells out not only the financial aspect, which the town is in spectacular condition, thank you. The facilities, how she works well with department heads, how she corresponds with the public, and on is the evaluation spelled out. I can't put my finger on anything in particular that I want to give her a goal on because she's got enough on her plate as it is. There's so much going on now along with the contract negotiations coming forward. All of these items here that she spelled out tonight, she's ultimately responsible for. I can't say, you know what, I want this, this, and this to her to be responsible for, and I want a detailed summary of what you've done for those particular four, and have her kind of focus on them and kind of not pay attention to the others. What I would like to do is I would like to not limit her to a specific goal unless she has something in that she needs something to say, you know what, like we all do, you know what, you got to cut that grass today? No, I'll put it off till next week. No, you got to do it today. If she is at that point where she needs a goal, where she needs a little bit of push and say, you know what, we've got to get that done, I'm all in favor for it. Otherwise, I would say what she's got in front of her now, excuse me, we don't need more, put more on her plate, and I think we can summarize and evaluate her come February, March, and ultimately in April for the report, that we would do very, very well. My thoughts.
I agree with you completely that the manager has taken on a lot, and it is difficult to pick a goal and say, you know, because she's going to do all of this. Whatever goals are assigned, she's going to do them. My concern is that because we have to use the evaluation form that we have agreed to, half of that evaluation form is based on specific goals. So half of her performance evaluation has to have specific goals. Unless, and I just feel it might be too late in the process, you can correct me if I'm wrong, to move forward with a different evaluation form for this year.
Well, I guess through you, Madam Chair, I don't want to change the evaluation form whatsoever. And you're right about specific goals about, you know, that's what it is, and I do not want to change that.
Yeah.
So I think that would be in the case where you have
and the manager has recommended four.
Specifics, yes. So those would be things that I would have no problem focusing on for her evaluation, but overall, these are all, she's all responsible for these, and we can evaluate her on the front end of that evaluation for everything that she's done here, because we're going to get a detailed, comprehensive evaluation report that it's going to take her a week to do. So, I mean, we're not letting anything fall through the cracks here. She's going to be accountable to us, and she's going to spell it out to us. So,
and I agree with you 100%, and I would support everything you said, but also support the recommended goals that the manager has identified by an asterisk, because those are also things that this board has indicated are priorities to them. I know that in a report, when we go to evaluate the town manager, all of this will come into play in that performance evaluation, because under different categories it will, but although the list is overwhelming, I would prefer to support, I would support personally the 4 goals that the manager has selected as singling out. And I'll open it up to the rest of the board. Mr. Carpenter.
I don't know where to start, but I would support, personally, I would support the continuation of the public safety. I would support the local emergency management plan. I think the climate grant dovetails into that, so I would support that. I would like to see a different 4th. We have the Citizenship Academy. I know we're going to host it again, or the manager's going to host it again. But I certainly think either the trash collection restructure or the ADA transition plan, which, again, probably the transition plan would probably also have some marginal relevance to the emergency management plan and the climate change grant. So those would be my 4.
So I just want to be clear, Mr. Carpenter, sometimes I have difficulty hearing on this end. You agree with the public safety feasibility study, the local comprehensive local emergency management plan, the MVP planning for climate change grant, and then your recommendation would be to exclude the Citizens Leadership Academy and include the, and again, I think this is what I heard, the trash collection system restructuring contract analysis?
I think I would change it to the ADA transition plan, because I think that would actually work towards the climate change grant and the emergency management grant. I think it would have some relevance to them.
Okay.
So the only thing I'm going to ask on that is let me check. We were hoping to be able to ultimately apply for a grant from the state for that, so I just want to check on the deadlines. I just don't know that the whole thing will be done. Like I said, we're aiming to get it done because I know there's some grant funds down the road once you have that in place. So I just want to check on the timing of that. But it is something we are working on. I mean, we're starting to meet on this week. I just don't know the exact timeline on that one.
Anything else? Mr. Bertham?
So do we don't need to have 4 necessarily, right?
We don't.
We can go with 3 and then add the ADA if that falls into it. Would that be a fair recommendation?
We could go with the 3, and then as guidance from the Board of Selectmen, once we set her goals, we see what she's working on. She's already indicated she's working on the ADA. Just indicate that that would be a priority to this board as well. If we set the 3 goals, leave off the Citizens Leadership Academy, and knowing that she's going to continue working on the ADA, that's a priority to the board. Because I think we have to set the goals, again, what's our next, we have to have them set by the end of the month. That was a vote that we took. The next meeting, it's in our notes from the first one.
So we have another meeting this month, so the town manager would be able to let us know what the status of the ADA is by then, or?
I will check. I'm not sure I'll have it, but I'll double check. I would tell you that when I look at this list, that has to get done, but I don't know that it's going to be, I just don't know the timing where I know I'm more familiar with the timing on the other ones, because that's potentially attached to a state requirement that we have to fulfill, so I don't know what kinds of, I don't know all the details on that one. In my priority list, and I would say I would probably agree with this, the trash collection system is something that would probably be higher than the ADA transition, because it's something that we have to get that done because we have a contract that's coming up that has to be renewed. So we have to have systems in place to get that contract ready, whereas the ADA we may have longer than the period of time that I'm thinking. At the end, they're all priorities, and so it is pretty difficult.
Mr. Liberty, did you want to add anything or make a comment?
I agreed with Mr. Carpenter's replacement, so I'm just considering now the ADA transition plan But I did want to bring the conversation back to the Drury Square project and bylaw, but and what the town manager's thoughts would be on adding that as one of the initiatives.
No, you know what, that's an excellent idea as well. We do have that's been ongoing, as you know, we started it in the fall, and we really want to get that done. We've had already 2 big meetings on that. Now we have to go through a whole process. We think it's really important to get it on for the May town meeting. I think it's an important piece to get done. So that would actually be helpful in the sense that then the planning board is the one that actually is going to have to do some of the work on the bylaw. So it would be nice, I think, to let the public know, the planning board, the town meeting members know that that type of thing is a priority of the board, not just another bylaw that we're working on. It's a really critical piece to the whole economic development. And I think the timing of it's important because of potentially all the work that's going to be going on in Drury Square and on Auburn Street. So that's probably an excellent one.
Is there any input?
I'm happy to support the Drury Square project as the 4th goal, or the trash collection system, if that's, Drury Square is.
So is the board in agreement that the first 3, the public safety feasibility study, the local comprehensive emergency management plan, and the MVP planning for climate change grant are 3 priorities? Are we in agreement on those 3? Excuse me. Mr. Holstrom.
Yeah, the public safety feasibility study is going to happen. It's being discussed with the department heads and with town administration, and it's going to happen. It's not a goal that I think we have to pay, reasonable time with right now because we haven't got any information, and it's happening. It's going to happen, and I think we'd be better off with 3 goals instead of having the 4. The Drury Square project and bylaw sounds, as the town manager has mentioned, should be paid attention to. The trash collection, with a contract coming up, yes. The ADA transition plan, that could be the 3rd one, and I think even though it's not going to be completed this year, or there may be some flexibility in the time, it's something we should focus on and pay attention to, that, it just continues on. It will get completed, but she's had goals before that have not completed, but they've had a mark that they have to get to. So those are the 3 that I would be satisfied with. Drury Square project and bylaw, trash collection system restructure and contract analysis, and the ADA transition plan. And 3, I think, is more than sufficient.
Is there further input?
And I'll make that a motion.
I'll second the motion.
So which ones now? I think we just changed.
I think you just went back to 4. So could you just be clear and make the motion?
Drury Square project and bylaw, the trash collection system restructure and contract analysis, and the ADA transition plan. Those 3.
Is there a second for discussion?
A second for discussion.
I just want to hear what the manager said again about the concerns with moving forward with the ADA transition plan.
I just don't know the timing, nor all the pieces of what we have to do. I just know that it's something that we're starting to put our team together to get it done. So I just don't know what it is we're going to be working on this year, but I can tell you, and to me, because of the grant funding and the requirements, the more important ones that have to get done would be the local emergency management plan and the MVP planning for climate change. Those are driven by deadlines imposed on us by the state. We have to do those. The ADA we also ultimately need to do. I just don't know the deadline on that one.
Okay, I'm listening to the town manager. I would amend my motion to include those 4, the local comprehensive local emergency management, Drury Square project, the trash collection system, and
Climate change.
the climate change. Thank you.
And you're removing the ADA?
Yes.
And I would say this, if this helps the board, as soon as we get a lot more information, I can continue to report to you on that throughout the year anyway. If it's something that's going to be deadline-driven, we're going to have to work on it. So I'm happy to keep you updated. I just don't have as much information on it for you tonight because I haven't even had the first meeting on it yet versus the others I have.
Well, that's my motion.
Mr. LaLiberty, did you second that motion?
I seconded.
Do you second the amended motion?
I'll second the amended motion.
So we're under discussion on the amended motion for the Drury Square project and bylaw,
Local comprehensive management.
the trash collection system restructure and contract analysis, the,
Local emergency management plan.
yeah,
The MVP.
And
and
the planning for a climate change grant.
is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous.
Great, thank you.
All righty, moving on, we are still under town manager items, and it's a vote to authorize the acceptance and expenditure of district local technical assistance grant funds from CMRPC with a value of approximately $16,000, and you can also speak to the second grant that I believe ties into that for $8,500.
Yes, through the chair, we don't actually get grant funds from CMRPC through the DLTA, which is the District Local Location Technical Assistance Grant. We have applied for several of them through CMRPC, and we have been able to get them. They are competitive, but they give you hours of their planning time. So the grant is made in terms of how many hours of time, but to give you an idea of what the value is of the hours, CMRPC does put a value onto that, but it's not actually a check that we'll be getting, it's their hours to do these two projects. So the master plan, which is in here, is we're seeking their assistance to help us with the public outreach component of it, because the committee's been meeting for a couple of years. They've got most of the chapters together. We're working on that final chapter on the, as well as CMRPC is actually doing the mapping and the transportation. But this would be to ask them to help us with the outreach component to try to engage the citizens and residents of Auburn to become more active in the review of the draft. So that would be one. And the other one is a zoning diagnostic toolkit, which is basically an evaluation toolkit that CMRPC has been rolling out with a couple of communities. They'd like to roll it out with Auburn and Charlton. We would each get our own toolkit, per se, on how to look at our bylaws, how to make sure that they're in sync and they coordinate with other bylaws and other things that are happening in town. So they're not just looked at as a single bylaw, but they're looked at within the whole picture. So the value that was given to us on those two is what I just thought would be easier for you to vote on than just the application of a grant for hours.
Mr. Holster?
Yeah, through the chair, these are competitive grants, Julie. Is there anything that we have a need for that is greater than the next one, that we have a good shot at getting any of these?
Yes, so these, my understanding is these are competitive grants. We generally apply for a couple every time. Occasionally, we've received two that are kind of running simultaneous to each other. Personally, I would think the master plan, we're trying to promote that, we want to get that done. It's been ongoing. We've been picking away at it with various grants and funds and staffing. It's a massive undertaking. It would have probably cost us $200,000 to go out and get someone to do it, so we've been trying to do it on our own. We can use help to try to wrap that up, and I think that would be good, but we're not limited to applying for one, so therefore we also felt that this was a really good tool from a planning perspective. When these grants come out, we have both economic development and planning departments look at it and tell us what their needs are, where they need the most help this year, because this is technical assistance. It's to give us staff support, and these are the two areas that they felt were the most critical.
Are there any additional questions, comments?
I make a motion to authorize the acceptance and expenditure of the district local technical assistance grant funds with a value of approximately $16,000 for zoning bylaw diagnostic.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, so voted. Is there an additional motion?
And I'll make a motion to authorize the acceptance and expenditure of district local technical assistance grant funds with a value of approximately $8,500 for the master plan outreach.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on, under town manager items, we have the 2019 Leadership Academy. Mrs. Jacobson.
Through the chair, yes, we're excited to announce that we have the schedule, which is attached in your packet, for the second annual Citizens Leadership Academy. As I mentioned earlier, we did make a couple of changes. We got some great feedback from the participants in the first one. And a lot of the feedback came out that they felt that DPW needed a little bit more time, as did the Department of Development and Inspectional Services, because they each had 1.5 nights, and the participants really felt that that second night where they split a night really should have been one each. So we are adding a night onto this. A couple of just smaller things. We'll change up a couple of our presentations based on some of the feedback that we got, but the participants last year loved the interactive activities, so we're going to be working to try to do even more. And I know the chair, Mrs. Goodrich, attended. She participated in the Citizens Leadership Academy, so she can also probably testify to some the things that people really liked with the interactive, where they actually get to see things, touch things, walk through things. So we're going to try to do more of that. We bumped the date out. We're starting it March 28th. Our thought was, and we're bumping it out a week because it's 11 weeks, we don't want to run into weather issues, which you tend to run into in March, so we're trying to get DPW at the end of the session, because that's when we want to take them into a sewer substation. We want to bring them up to the golf course. You want to show them some of the parks, and it's outdoors. So you want to make sure that it's good weather, and you want to make sure that they're not getting called to an emergency that's weather-related before that. So we just thought it would be better to start it a little later. It might be easier for people not to be coming out in the middle of winter. This year, we've decided to allow up to 20 participants. Last year, we initially kept it at 12. We were new at it. We had a bus through the school department that only seated 12, so we thought, okay, everyone's going to want to take the bus the 3 nights that we brought them to different locations. We had 16 applicants and didn't want to turn anyone away by the deadline, so we had called every applicant last year and said, would you mind taking your own vehicle if we didn't use the bus to allow more people to participate? And everyone agreed to do that. So this year, unless we have a problem, we're thinking we wouldn't use a bus at all. Everyone would have their own transportation, which they all did last year, and allow more people to join in. Excuse me. We also had to give consideration to some of the places where we put this on and how big the room is. Pardon me. We have the flyer. We're going to post everything tomorrow on the social media, the website, Auburn Cable Television. We have an updated application here that people can apply for and submit to us. We're asking for all applications by February 24th. We need to know how many people, because we prepare those 4-inch thick binders full of information, and it takes a long time to get all the updated information every year on those binders. So we need some time. I would say if we only had 3 or 4 applicants, we'd probably want to postpone this because it's a lot of work for all the departments to do for a small amount of people. But if we can get a decent-sized class, then it's absolutely worth doing it. I know police and fire occasionally didn't get a lot on one of their sessions, so they put it out again later on. So, you know, hopefully that isn't the case. But I think we have to make sure we're not wasting everyone's time for the amount of work that goes into it for just a few people. So please spread the word. And I think it's a really good idea. The intent of this, again, is to try to get residents in town that are maybe interested in participating as volunteers on various things, but also I think it's a great idea for town meeting members, Board of Selectmen members, planning board members, anyone who's already on a board or commission, to just get a better idea of what goes on broadly in all the departments as opposed to just the area that you're focused on. So we would encourage everyone who's already on a board or commission to participate. It would be great to have them.
And this is on the social media pages?
It will be all posted tomorrow.
Excellent.
And I should have mentioned it, it's Thursday evenings, so March 28th to June 6th, 6 to 8:30 p.m.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on this? Good luck. I will be sure to share it on my Facebook page because I really enjoyed it, so.
Great, thank you.
Do you have anything else
I'm all set,
tonight?
thanks.
Okay. Moving on to tabled items, we have a revision to the recognition policy. Who's going to take that one?
Lionel?
We just, basically, the last time we came to the board with a revision to the recognition policy, the board made several suggestions and adjustments, and I went back and took those and made a new revision as of 1/10/2019, and basically asking for board's approval.
And include, hold on. Chair, the second page has all the cross-outs that we revised that as. So the one you have on top is the one that we'd be looking for approval on.
Okay. So it appears you've taken the, feedback from the board members and adjusted the policy as such. Are there questions or comments? Do the board members want to take action tonight on this?
I'll make a motion that we approve them as revised on 1/10/19.
Okay. And this is the recognition policy. Is there a discussion?
It's both. It's the same section, so I would think we could take them as the same.
Okay, we haven't discussed the proclamations and letters yet, so if you're going to include both, we should at least discuss it and...
On my side, the same goes for the policy to issue proclamations and letters. That same meeting, we talked about that as well, and we struck several things, changed a few things, and, basically at the recommendation of the board, also revised that as of 1/10/19, which was basically the date of our subcommittee meeting. So I'd be happy if they're both accepted together.
Okay. So Mr. Carpenter is making a motion to approve the changes made to the policy to issue recognitions, as well as the policy to issue proclamations and letters. Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. So that takes care of
Yes,
tabled
thank you.
items A and B. Thank you for your work on that. Are there any Board of Selectmen member items? Is there any additional public comment? We have the minutes from November 26, 2018, as well as the minutes from December 10th, 2018. The minutes of the 2026 meeting were sent in advance because they were lengthy and involved the dog hearing. Are there any corrections or omissions? Mr. Holstrom.
Again, my thank you to Sharon. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of information passed back and forth, and I see no omissions or errors of anything that I recall of that meeting. And both of these sets of minutes are detailed, comprehensive, and again, I thank you very much.
Okay, so the chair will accept them as written. Is there anything else before the board tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank
We
you,
are
and
adjourned.
good night.